It's only morning. Good morning, everyone. We are very pleased to have with us today, as a special briefing, our guest from Lebanon, the resident and humanitarian coordinator in Lebanon, Imran Riza, who is speaking to you from Beirut. We'll get him up on the screen, and he'll be able to talk to you in just 1 second. Oh, great. How are you, Imran? It's great to see you.
Good to see you.
Uh,
Good to see you.
Please, I know that things continue even after yesterday's announcement of a ceasefire to be a little bit difficult there. So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, if I was doing this a few days ago, it would have been very different, I think, in terms of what I'm saying. But let me go through some notes very quickly, and then I'm happy to answer questions. I mean, we woke up this morning, to news, obviously, of the ceasefire. And there was uncertainty. I mean, the big question was, does it apply to Lebanon? Will it apply to Lebanon? And of course, there were many voices from this side saying that they were hoping for Lebanon's inclusion. And then somehow the developments of today have been dramatically sort of different. I don't know if you can hear it, but I mean, the sound over the last 3 hours that's been dominating all of Beirut is our ambulances going around. Even before the most recent developments, there was an early morning airstrike last night, early this morning, at a cafe in Saida, and it was on the Corniche of Saida that killed 8 people. There were also more than a dozen airstrikes that were reported in the first half of today, before the major escalation. And then, of course, around 2:15 local time, the IDF reported carrying out a wave of over 100 airstrikes in something like 10 minutes. I happened to be at a meeting with a counterpart in Yarzeh, up the hill, and we heard huge explosions, and we were trying to figure out, I mean, living here, you try and figure out, is it a sonic boom, is it an explosion, is it in this area, is it in that area? And it was only when I left that meeting a few minutes later, that when I was driving down to Beirut, that I saw all the smoke all over Beirut. So this has been dramatic. It's been enormous, the level of these strikes. We have no figures yet. This is just in the first few hours of this, but it's believed that hundreds may have been killed, and certainly lots of casualties. The hospitals are overwhelmed, and of course there's a huge call out for blood donations throughout the country. And the strikes were not only in Beirut, they were also in the south. They were in a lot of different areas. The irony is, this morning, you actually had people that were, because they heard of the ceasefire, people started moving down. They started moving towards the south. Not numbers like in 2024, but some people started moving. And the message from the government was very strongly, please don't move yet. We don't know what's happening. And of course, the situation in the south has been so difficult, especially I mean, we were talking about how bloody this last Easter weekend has been in the south. Since the start of this renewed escalation, which was in early March, sorry, I can't be in the office right now, and and there's give me 1 second to try and get some light properly. So since the start of this escalation, as you know, on the 2nd of March, we've now reached over 1,500 people killed. It's 1,530, according to the Ministry of Public Health. This includes 130 children killed and 461 children injured. It is a huge civilian tragedy. There's absolutely no doubt about it. The displacement also has reached an unprecedented scale. It's some close to 1.2 million, which means nearly 20%, 1 in 5 persons in Lebanon are now displaced. This exceeds what we had in terms of the scale of displacement in 2024. There are currently 138,000 people sheltering in 678 collective sites. Most of them are schools, with children making up about 1/3 of those that are in the collective shelters. But the majority, some 800,000 plus, are dispersed across host communities or informal settings, and they have often very limited access to basic services. The way that displacement is happening here, and not 100%. A lot of the strikes that happened today did not have displacement orders, did not have warning orders before that. But what we're calling displacement orders apply to something slightly over 15% of Lebanon's territory. And that 15% covers about where a quarter of the population lived before the start of the current escalation. So you have those that have fled, the internally displaced that I was speaking about, those that are in shelters from the IDPs, and those that are outside shelters. You have host communities that are affected by the displacement and the people that they are trying to host, and there are levels of tension because of that as well. But then you also have people that either have chosen not to leave their villages in the south in particular, or are unable to feel trapped over there for other reasons. And many of them are not leaving because they're afraid that they won't be able to return. And our estimation is somewhere between 110 to 130, 140,000 people are in that category. As I mentioned, the host communities have a huge amount of pressure on them. Remember that Lebanon has gone through a series of crises since 2019. And of course, in 2024, you had the trauma of that escalation of hostilities that happened between September and November of 24. You had the displacement at that point, and you didn't really have a real recovery happening when people returned to the south. In 24, something like 800,000 people moved in the matter of a couple of weeks back to their places. Unfortunately, right now, when you speak to the displaced and when you look at the situation and you look at the type of displacement as well as the type of kinetic action that's happening in the south, it looks very unlikely that you would have a similar scale of people able to go back whenever there is a cessation to this. Essential infrastructure and public services are, of course, increasingly under strain. What we keep trying to emphasize is the pressure on the health system. And the pressure on the health system is not just simply because of the years of decay, in a sense, that we've had here and the different crises, but it's also attacks on healthcare. There have been more than 106 incidents reported, resulting in 57 deaths and 158 injuries among health workers. So not only are these health workers being killed, but the ability of the health system to respond is also weakened in that process. Many health facilities have been forced to close, while others are damaged or overwhelmed. At least 51 healthcare centers and 6 hospitals have closed. And as I was mentioning, many others are damaged. This is, of course, limiting access to life-saving assistance when it is most needed. Education has been severely disrupted. Public schools and the Lebanese University, which is the national university, are being used as shelters. Learning interrupted for thousands of students. Remote learning remains constrained by displacement, electricity shortages, and limited connectivity. It's not just the displacement, it's not just the hostilities, but it's also the disruption of education that's going to have a huge long-term impact on children, and particularly girls and children with disabilities as well. And I think you will hear more about this from my colleague from UNFPA, who will be briefing, I believe, a bit later. We have been, I won't go through all the numbers. We have updates that we put out. You get them from OCHA. That will give you all the numbers of what we have been delivering. Just suffice it to say that country over here. The first is just simply the de-escalation. The escalation has to stop. I think we all know that there are no military solutions in situations like this. De-escalation and dialogue are urgently needed to prevent further suffering. Second, international humanitarian law must be respected. Civilian infrastructure, and humanitarian and medical personnel must be protected at all times. Swift and unimpeded humanitarian access must be facilitated. And frankly, over the last 2 weeks, much of our work has been about that, has been about trying to see how we advocate more strongly about the violations of international humanitarian law and to see how we have more access to those that are in hard-to-reach areas. And the third is simply funding. We need to have support. We have an excellent coordination with the government, and the government is very much in the lead of the response. But all of this work that's going into this needs resources, and the level of needs amongst those affected are huge at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. I'll now open up the floor for questions. First question, Nabil.
Thank you for the briefing, Nabil Abisab, Al Arabi TV station. We know that the border crossing between Lebanon and Syria is maybe blocked now, and it seems that the airport area is under heavy bombardment. So what is the main road, or how do you get your humanitarian aids that are donated to Lebanon? And number two, it seems that there was some talks with Turkey to provide some shelters, or maybe tents, or temporary houses, or this kind of shelters. Are you part of these talks? Do you know about it? Is there any update on it? Thank you.
Okay, should I go ahead or we'll take some questions, or should I answer each as you wish?
Why don't you answer this, and then we'll ask others in turn.
Okay, yeah, no, we were extremely worried. I forget, it was about maybe 5 days ago, that the threats came on the attacks, that there would be an attack on Masna, on the main border crossing between Lebanon and Syria, the one that goes from Beirut to Damascus, that main road. So it was closed right away, and it remains closed. But our understanding is that there has been a great deal of advocacy by a few key states to try to keep it open. And the latest I'm hearing is it might open again soon. But what you're saying is highlighting what we're extremely worried about in the current context. What happens if we lose our road access, and what happens if a port is affected, or the airport? We are, of course, hoping that those that can will influence this to try and make sure that doesn't happen. At the moment, in terms of humanitarian assistance, the majority of it comes by sea or by air. Very little is coming by road, but that should change. Traditionally, it was much more. We've had one convoy that came of something like, I think it took 12 days from Dubai that came across. We also had one that came from Jordan. But clearly that is a channel that we need to keep open, not just for humanitarian aid, but also for the economy of Lebanon and fruit and vegetables that are being exported, other things that are being exported. So it is extremely important. On the thing, I don't know too much about, I know there was discussion about prefabs and shelters and the Turks, the Turkey being ready to assist in that. It initially happened when you had the building collapses in Tripoli earlier this year, but also in terms of the current displacement. But I'm not very sure where that stands right now. It is with the government. I think the government could respond better on that rather than us.
Ibtisam?
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Ibtisam Azim, Al Arab Al Jadid newspaper. I want to follow up on something you said. You said that even if there is a ceasefire and it's going to hold, it's very unlikely that people will be able to go back. And I assume you mean to the south. If you could elaborate on that and also on what would that mean for the host communities, for your work. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what we don't know. We don't know the scale of what can and cannot happen at this point. But I do think that what we've seen in terms of the presence of the IDF in the area south of the Litani, also what has happened in terms of the damage to many of the villages over this last period, and the public pronouncements that have been issued, and how this is perceived by the population that has been displaced. When one speaks to them, many of them are extremely worried that either their villages have been destroyed. I mean, we recently saw a place like Naura, for example, where a lot of civilian houses were also destroyed there. So they're worried about where do they go back to, and they listen to what the public pronouncements are from government officials on the Israeli side. So I think that is something that does worry them. Now, that also means that, and people feel that this is going to be a protracted situation. So the question that you ask is very correct. How will host communities deal with this? How will that be? If you've seen some of the pronouncements from the leadership here recently, including over the Easter weekend and on Easter Sunday, a lot of it has been about tolerance and trying to make sure that many of those that are displaced are treated generously and welcomed, and which is something that we saw in 2024, which is something that we've been worried about at this time for the reasons that I think many of you have actually reported on already.
Okay,
Just a quick follow-up. Are you preparing for that scenario? Is the UN working and preparing for that?
We're working for a scenario where we are responding to the needs of those that are displaced, to the needs of those that are remaining behind, and to the needs of host communities. We can do that to the extent that we have resources to do that, hence that whole push for that. And we're working very closely with the government. So the strategies for where people will be hosted and where they will stay, and the ability for people to be able to cope will be dependent on both of those things, the strategy as well as the resources. The majority of people right now are not in shelters. And one of the best ways to be able to assist them when they are with relatives or renting themselves or others is actually cash assistance. So the Ministry of Social Affairs has a social welfare program, a cash program on that needs support in order to be able to assist those that were either on it or newly registered onto that program because they're displaced right now.
Adla?
Hi, Imran. Adla Masood with The National. With Israel launching today the most violent wave of airstrikes, are we at a stage where the humanitarian situation in Lebanon is spiraling beyond the capacity of aid agencies to respond?
I mean, even before today, we were feeling that we are urgently going to donors and saying we need much quicker response from you in terms of the resources. Remember, everything's costing much more right now with the cost of transport, and it's much more difficult to actually have all the supply chains working. So it is a really, really difficult situation in terms of that. So already that, I think what happened with we keep talking about escalations. This is another huge escalation upon the escalations that we've been facing. If you look at the last 2 weekends, we described each of those weekends as escalating on what was happening before. So the needs are huge, but the basic need is to try and get some de-escalation, to try and get some stop, some halt to this. But yeah, we are very, very worried about being able to do to cater to the needs that are there. And remember, the more that people are under pressure, whether it's the host communities or the displaced, the more tension you have amongst people as well, just simply because of that.
Okay. Bisan?
Thank you very much, Bisan Abukwek with Al Jazeera Arabic. So with this escalation upon escalation and the situation being as dire as it is, and what we've seen today, Israel targeting areas that were not targeted before, I mean, what would the backup plan be for the UN at this point with all of these constraints and funding and aid coming in also, as you had mentioned, from the Gulf that was a possibility in 2024 and no longer now. What's the exit? What can the UN do in the face of all of this?
I mean, it's no exit, huh? And we're actually not looking for an exit. We're looking for the resources to be able to deliver, to stay and deliver. We had a number of convoys that we were trying to do a few days ago to some of the villages in the south that have been cut off. And we weren't able to do them for a few days, but we were able resources we have and see how we prioritize and allocate within that. It's nothing new, it's just more severe right now. And one of the other worries we have and that's why we were really happy to have Tom Fletcher here last week and have the Secretary General here a couple of weeks ago, is that there's not enough attention on the needs in Lebanon and not enough response by donors for what we're trying to do over here.
Okay. Ephraim?
Thank you so much. It's Ephraim Kosaifi with Arab News Daily. The Lebanese last night went to bed thinking that they are included in the ceasefire. Lebanon is not included. I wonder how have the Lebanese reacted?
Sort of pull people. I think everyone across the board has just been incredibly shocked by the level As I was mentioning earlier, this morning, there were people that were actually wanting to move south and started moving to the south. Cars, etc., moving, which meant people were really waiting for some and try to restart their lives. It is what it appears that Lebanon is not part of this. Yeah.
Also, please, a quick one on the people in the south who have chosen to remain and refuse to evacuate, the 110,000 to 140,000. As you said, what are your worries about those people in particular? Do you have any message for them?
Well, the message is that, I mean, the message we deliver ourselves because we keep trying to access them and go there. So with supplies, with trying to, I mean, one of the main things in one area of the south is trying to get down there to fix some of the water systems because it's affecting quite a few people. I mean, a whole population in that area. There have been a number of NGOs. There have been a lot of UN agencies, you know, WFP, UNICEF, UNHCR. Everyone has been moving and doing convoys. But also, you may have seen the Papal Nuncio has gone down. Caritas is doing their convoys. And one of the most amazing actors that we have here is the Lebanese Red Cross that is throughout the country and certainly throughout the south. So we're all collaborating and amongst ourselves trying to see how we parcel out this remaining population and who's accessing what in order to try to be equitable also in terms of who we're reaching on the basis of their needs.
Okay. Benny?
Sorry I'm late, and if anyone asked this, please just ignore it. In the last half hour, it came out that President Trump told PBS, it was asked? Okay, sorry.
Okay, Nada?
Hi, Imran. Neda Tawfiq with the BBC. Thank you so much for this update. You mentioned that not enough attention is on the needs in Lebanon. I wonder if you can just give us a sense with officials, diplomats from other countries who are trying to do what they can, what the mood is like, just their reaction to the level of escalation and some of those public pronouncements by Israeli officials that you mentioned. I guess just, do you think more needs to be done by those countries? You know, again, just their reaction to how far Israel is taking this.
We have from the beginning of this escalation, it happened a great deal in 2024. One of our central asks, one of our central messages was to have member states that have influence implore the parties to respect international humanitarian law, insist on it. And so again, to see as many attacks on, on civilians, civilian infrastructure, on civilian responders, has been something that I've discussed actually a lot with different member states over here, diplomats. And if you sort of do take a look at some of the statements that have been coming out from some of the diplomats here, but also from the capitals, I think last weekend and the weekend before, the 2 weekends ago was when the 3 journalists were killed, and when you had quite a few medics and health infrastructure hit. And there were a number of messages that came out after that. This last weekend also, I think there were a few medics killed, but it was more also about displacement. And of course, we can't forget that our peacekeepers, our Indonesian peacekeepers also have suffered from that. And we hold all parties responsible for their they're violating international humanitarian law in this regard. How do we do it? I mean, I think your question is, how do you do it more effectively? I really don't know. It's a bit of a dilemma. I think Tom Fletcher, the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, was extremely strong and eloquent in his briefing to the Security Council last Monday or Tuesday in it. We've had a lot of statements going out. There have been statements by the EU as well. So there's statements, but at the same time, we still see a lot of this happening.
Sorry, just to follow up, I guess for us it would be useful to get what's happening beyond the statements, kind of behind closed doors. I mean, I know you can't reveal too much, but even just a sense of...
I think you have to talk to some of the member states. I can't really speak on behalf of them. I think the UN has been quite strong in terms of what we've been saying and trying to push on this. And it's pretty straightforward. And it's not just the UN, it's the ICRC, it's MSF, it's across the board, all those that are involved in humanitarian action at this point.
I'd like once more to thank our guest, Imran Riza, the resident and humanitarian coordinator for Lebanon. And I wish you the best of luck as this proceeds. I hope it gets calmer soon.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Take care and see the rest of you at noon.